Hey, welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for tonight, December 19th with Richard Cuicchi. Richard will be discussing the famous Alou brothers of the Giants and when they all played together in the same outfield. Uh, Matty Alou and Felipe Alou were drafted by the New York Giants. Before that, a little housekeeping. We will have a meeting
Names and
next.
fonts.
We will have a meeting next Thursday
Zoom.
after Hanukkah and Christmas for those who want to attend. It's going to be a wrap-up meeting. First of all, happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas to all those here. We will talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of the organization, and I would hope that everybody would bring something to the table that they would like to see improved going on for next year. I had a couple of ideas that I will share with the group next week. Um, I think that's about it. The January and February schedules are basically complete with guest speakers, and one of my ideas will involve some of the guest speakers as well next Thursday. So if you're able to join in, you join in. If the holiday prevents you from doing that, it is understood. And again, we don't take attendance here, so there's no issue here. I just wish the Giants would do something the next couple of days to get everybody into a really good and happy holiday spirit. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Richard Cuicchi. Richard, welcome to the New York Giants Preservation. I give it up for Richard. I will share the
Thanks.
screen with you.
Okay. Thanks.
Hold on, that's not what I wanted to do. Uh, Post tools. There you go. You should be all set.
Oh, I haven't. Okay. Can you see that?
Richard,
Yep.
I gotta tell you, that practice certainly helped.
Yeah,
First
man. I'm
time,
telling
and it didn't take any amount of time. All
you.
yours, my man.
Thanks. Thank you for having me this evening. I look forward to a lively discussion with you. And it's a little bit of background about me. Um, let's see. I'm originally from North Mississippi. I graduated from Mississippi State. I now live in New Orleans.
Oh, well.
I was an IT professional for over 40 years, and it's been a SABR member since 1983. My interests are baseball relatives, and that's kind of how I got to this topic of the Alou brothers. Also interested in New Orleans baseball history. Not having grown up here, I've learned a lot over the years about that. And then one of my favorite players was Will Clark. Of course, he went to Mississippi State. He's from New Orleans. Went to Jesuit High School and so forth. So. Um, I published a book in 2012 called Family Ties, and has a long name there. But it was about baseball's relatives, fathers, sons, brothers, cousins, nephews. I looked at both, major league and minor league players, uh, and I knew as soon as I published it, it was going to be out of date, right? Because unless you keep updating with the new players coming in to the leagues, so I came up with a website called Baseball Relatives as an extension of the book, where annually I compile a list of all of the players in, major league, minor leagues for that year, their relatives. I only include coaches, executives, umpires, anybody with a relative in baseball is shown on that website, and I'll show the link for that later. Um, Regarding New Orleans baseball history, there's a website here called Crescent City Sports. It's all New Orleans, all Southeast Louisiana sports, Saints, Pelicans, Tulane, LSU, but nobody really writes about baseball. And so that's my niche, is writing about history of baseball. It's college, it's American Legion, it's the old Pelicans from yesteryear. So anything related to baseball, New Orleans, I contribute fairly frequently. Um, my website is the10thinning.com, and it's kind of I write a weekly blog, and I have it's kind of a collecting point for all the other writing that I do, has links or pointers to that. With Saber, I've authored about 65 game stories, 15 biographies under the Games Project and Bio Project, and a lot of those have have made their way into SABR books. The most recent of them is the one called Dazzling Debuts, which is about major league players that hit a home run in their first major league at bat. So I've also written for Sports Collector Digest. Start Spreading the News is a New York Yankees blog, and then the Internet Baseball Writers Association. Here's the pitch. So I use all of those platforms to write about different topics. But today, obviously, we're going to be focused on the Alou brothers. So here's kind of an outline of what I'm going to speak to. How do the Alou brothers relate to the New York Giants? Uh, Gary kind of mentioned that earlier that both were Matty and Philippe were signed by as New York Giants minor leaguers. I'm going to do some background on the historic game on September 10th, where the Alous played in the game the first time, and then September 15th they actually played in the outfield together. So I'll talk about that game a little bit, and then some other appearances that they made over the years. I'll look at their career stats, and then I have some Alou trivia. Maybe I can give you a few things that you can try on your favorite relatives or fans about the Alous. Then I want to spend a little bit of time about the Alou Rojas family tree. I don't know if you realize the Alous, Felipe, Matty, and Jesus. Actually, their last name was Rojas, and their mother's name was Alou, and I'll tell you about how that came about. And then I've got a list of other families with three or more brothers in the major leagues. Spend a little bit of time on that. And then I transition to other stories involving relatives that I've written about for SABR. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but I'll show you the list of those. And then finally, I have some links to the different platforms that I write to today. All right, so let's dive in. Um, so first thing is, how many have had the question, who were the first trio of Major League brothers to play in the same game? And of course, people that are not as familiar will say, well, it's the DiMaggios. And then they'll say, well, maybe it's the Jose and Tommy and Hector Cruz with the Cardinals. And then most recently is the Molina brothers. But of course, the answer is Felipe and Matty and Jesus Alou. So you can see their dates of birth. Felipe was 3 years older than Matty, and then 7 years older than Jesus, sometimes called Jay. You'll find that written about him. So uh, Felipe was signed by the New York Giants initially. Um, he was um, uh, he was recruited by the Giants international scout Alex Pompez, who also had signed Marichal and Cepeda and a number of other major leaguers, even outside of the Giants. Felipe was the second native Dominican Republic to play in the majors. Of course, the first was Ozzie Virgil Sr. uh, when he made his debut actually with the Giants in 1956. Uh, Felipe played 2 seasons in the Giants minor league organization uh, before the franchise moved to San Francisco in '58. Matty was 18 years old. He was also signed by the Giants, played 1 year in their organization, 1957 at Michigan City in Class D ball. And then, of course, he naturally went with the Giants, the San Francisco Giants later. And then Jesus was 17 when he was signed by the Giants in 1959. So that kind of gives you the background. Uh, so here's some of the timeline of how the different Alou brothers got to the Giants. Philippe was signed in '56. By 1957, he was in AAA in Minneapolis. In '56, he initially went to Lake Charles, Louisiana, in the old Evangeline League. Played about 5 games, and then he was transferred to I think Cocoa, Florida, in the Florida League, where I think he hit like 380 with that team. He went to the AAA Phoenix team in '58, and then made his debut in that summer in June the 8th. He was mostly a part-time player with the Giants from '59 to '60, and then got a full-time role with them in '61 and '63. And of course, he was traded to the Milwaukee Braves for '64 season. Um, Matty was signed as I mentioned, '57. Took him a couple of years to get to AAA Tacoma, but again, he made his debut and September 26th of that year. He was the seventh Major League player from the Dominican. Matty and Felipe played in the same game for the first time in Matty's debut. And mostly, Matty was a part-time player, 61 to 65. We'll
Mm.
talk about that a little bit later. Of course, it was really with the Pirates that I think he made his name as a hitter a few years later. Philippe, in one of his books, said Matty was only 5'5" and 130 pounds. He said the only reason he was given a contract was because of him. So, but he actually turned out to be a pretty fair hitter. Uh, Jesus signed in 59, as I mentioned before. He actually had a good spring training in 63, but the general manager, uh, can't remember his name right now, uh, mentioned or thought he needed a little more seasoning, so he went to AAA Tacoma, uh, and then, of course, later in that season got called up. His debut was on September 10th, which is again the historic game in which all three brothers played together. Uh, the He played with the Giants through 1968. So, so leading up to the game on the 10th, of course, the Giants were coming off of an NL pennant from in '62. I think John Amarino covered that pretty well in your last session. Um, in '63, the Giants were in second and third place up until about September, and then it came down to the Cardinals and Dodgers. And of course, the Dodgers were like 19-9 in that month. Their opening day outfield was Alou in right field, Mays in center, Willie McCovey was in left field. Harvey Keene was a reserve outfielder, so he got starts in left field and right field as well as second base. Um, Matty played in 63 games, but only started in six. He was mostly used as a pinch hitter, but he was batting around 145 when in early August, and the Giants sent him to Tacoma. But then at the beginning of September, Matty and Jesus got called back up to the Giants. Jesus had been hitting 324 with 11 home runs and 69 runs batted in. So his early spring training showing actually panned out in the regular season that year. Um, Alvin Dark was okay with the brothers playing together, but he had this thought that he could still wind up being in second place, and he didn't want to do anything to risk that. So as it took several days before the brothers actually got into the game, which again was on September the 10th. So part of the it was a three-game series with the Mets. Dark had planned, to play the brothers, but again, he was hesitant about putting them all in the outfield at the same time because he had Mays and McCovey's bats that he had in his pocket. On that day, though, Felipe started in right field. The Giants got behind kind of early. I think Billy O'Dell and Carlton Willie were the starting pitchers in the Polo Grounds. Uh, uh, the they scored three runs after 7 innings, but then in the eighth, Carlton Willie, who was still in the game, Jesus went and pinch hit for Jose Pagan and grounded out to short. Matty then pinch hit for Bob Garibaldi, who was one of the five pitchers that the Giants used that day, and he struck out. And then Philippe came up in his normal turn at bat, and he grounded out to the pitcher. But neither Matty or Jesus went to the outfield. McCovey and Cepeda wound up hitting home runs in the ninth, but it was too late as the Mets won 4-2. Uh, in that game, the Giants at that point were in fourth place, about eight and a half games out of first place. Of course, the Mets were in last place with 39 and a half games out of first place. But in that game, McCovey and like I said, Cepeda hit home runs, and Jim Hickman with the Mets had also hit a home run in the fifth inning. That was part of their three runs to get ahead. Then on September 15th against Pittsburgh, the three brothers played in the outfield for the first time together. Again, the Felipe Mays and McCovey started out in their usual positions with an 8-3 lead in the bottom of the seventh. Dark put Felipe in left and put Jesus in right field, replacing McCovey in the batting order. Um, the Giants scored four more runs in the top of the eighth, and so Dark wound up putting Matty in left field and moved Felipe to center, replacing Mays, and kept Jesus in right. And the brothers finished that game together. The final score was 13-5 in that game. The Giants scored 18 hits. There were six errors combined in that game, two by San Francisco and four by the Pirates. Uh, Philippe later said it was Mays who convinced Dark to put Matty in his place, and as the game got, the score increased late in the game. So Matty didn't bat in the game, but Jesus went 0 for 2 and Philippe was 1 for 5. So anyway, that was again the first time the three brothers played together. So other appearances that they had seven more games together where they played in the same game, but only two of those were they in the outfield together, and they were both blowout games against the Braves and the Mets. They never started a game together. Uh, Felipe and Matty homered in the game on the May 5th of 61, and then in 65, Matty and Jesus homered in the same game on August the 12th, and later Felipe and Matty joined up with the Yankees in 1973.
That's right, they did.
So here's a look at their career stats. I won't go through the detail of all these, but you can get a feel for how they compared. I think of note though, Matty won the National League batting title in 1966 with a 342, and Philippe finished in second, and that was the first time two brothers had ever been 1-2 in the lead. In the National League, Matty led the National League in hits and doubles in 1969. That was when he was with the Pirates. Philippe led the National League in hits in 2000 and excuse me uh, in 1966 with 218 and runs with 122, and then he led again in 68 with 210 hits. So both of them were actually turned out to be fairly pretty darn good hitters. Matty was in the World Series with Oakland in 72, and then oddly Jesus with Oakland in 73 and 74. In All-Star appearances, Matty was with the Pirates in 68 and 69, and Philippe with the Giants and Braves. Hey, one note about Jesus, I found he had the lowest walk rate of any player in the 20th century. Only 3% of his appearances were walks. So as you can see, if you measure by OPS plus, he was an 86. I mean, he was less than average than the average player. But still, he still played 1,380 games in the major leagues for quite a bit of time. So, uh, moving on here to like I said, I had a few trivia things here. Uh, Matty was the first batter in the opening game of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. Philippe was the first batter in the opening of the Busch Stadium in St. Louis, and Jesus was the first batter in the San Diego's Jack Murphy Stadium. So thought that was pretty odd. They are the only trio of brothers to collect 1,000 hits apiece. The DiMaggios came kind of close as Vince hit 959. Of course, Joe and Dom were well over that. I think I mentioned this before that Matty and Philippe were the first set of brothers to finish in the top two spots for the league batting title. And Philippe and Matty, their home run that they hit together in 61 was the first since Paul and Lloyd Wainer in the National League in 1938. So I thought I'd throw those out there for you to consider. So going back then to how did Philippe get his name Alou? Of course, his given name was Philippe Rojas. That was his father's name. His mother's last name was Alou. When he wrote out, his name on applications or forms for the Giants organization, he wrote Philippe Rojas Alou. So somebody just figured, well, Alou's his last name. Well, he never corrected it, never changed it. And of course, his brothers followed suit with that. So there's quite a few baseball relatives here. Of course, Philippe is most notably Moises Alou was a major leaguer for quite a while there. I think he played with under Philippe at both Montreal and Giants. Luis Rojas, who kept the last name, of course, was the major league manager for the Mets, and he was also had played in the minors as well. There was a Felipe Alou Jr., who was a minor league player for about 5 years. He is currently a minor league manager in the Baltimore Orioles organization. Jose Alou was only a minor leaguer for about 3 seasons part time, never did make it beyond that. And then Philippe's daughter Valerie was worked in the front office with the Giants for about 3 years. I think she's an attorney. So other relatives of the Alou brothers, cousin Jose Alou was a major leaguer for 2 seasons. They were the uncle of Mel Rojas, who was a pitcher for about 10 years, and then uncle of Francisco Rojas, minor leaguer, and the great uncle of Mel Rojas Jr. So there was actually a fourth brother, Juan, who it was Philippe said had the potential to play professional baseball, but he wound up pursuing an engineering degree and worked in business and didn't play the game. So I want to share this little story with you. I did an interview with Ed Randall on the MLB Network, his radio show, and talked about my book Family Ties. And I went through some of the examples, and Ed said, "Rich," he said, you missed one of the Alou brothers." I said, "What do you mean?" I'm thinking real hard. What was that fourth one that I missed? Whatever. I said, "Well, I guess Ed, I guess I don't remember who that was." He says, Boog. I said, Boog? Yeah, he says Boogaloo, which is, of course, is the name of a genre of Latin music that was popular in the 1960s. So Philippe Alou in his book actually mentions that he heard that joke as well, but he said he was never real too humored about it. So
Yeah.
Boogaloo.
so here's a list of some of the other families with three or more brothers. So I think there's a total of 20, including the Alou brothers. Of course, probably the most famous of them are the DiMaggios. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the Mansell brothers at the top right, they actually played together in a game in the minor leagues back in the 1800s, early days. Um, John Paciorek, as you might know, was with his two brothers. He was and played in one game for the Astros. He was 3 for 3 and had 2 walks, and that was the only game he ever played, and that was in 1963. Uh, the Drew brothers, JD, Stephen, and Tim. One thing about them is they were all first round draft choices.
Hmm.
And then finally, the Wright brothers, and they were not related to Orville and Wilbur. So, all right. So here's some of the other kind of leaving the Alou story. Here's some other stories that I've written for SABR with about that involve fathers, sons, or brothers. Again, I'm not going to go through all these, but if you have a chance to go to the SABR website, you can find these under my name as in the list of games. But just Necro one Joe Necro hit his only home run against his brother. Uh, when Billy Ripken made his major league debut, of course, his brother was playing and his father was the manager. So they may be the only other family with three major leaguers in the same team in the same uniform at one time. I'm not sure if there's others of that, but and moving on to the next list here, I had written games about Kent the Griffey's father and son and the Tim Raines father and son playing together. Nolan Ryan pitched against his son in an exhibition game with he was with the Rangers at the time, and his son was in college at the University of Texas. But anyway, though I'm not going to go through all of those, but those give you an idea. Kind of these are some examples of again my interest in writing about family ties and in baseball relatives. So here's a last page here is I can be reached at Richard at the10thinning.com, and these are some of the links to the different websites that I mentioned to you early. I don't know, Gary, you may want to mail this out if people have interest in it. But
Anybody has an interest, I have them,
Yes,
so
I
feel
do.
free.
Yeah, please send them to me. I'm gonna look at this stuff. Just got
okay,
here late.
that's it for me. I guess I'll turn it back to you, Gary.
Richard, that was fabulous. Really, really, really enjoyable and a different type of thing that we usually do. I got a couple of questions for you. Um, One is about the brothers and then about the Alous. I saw your Saber list. Did Gaylord Perry ever face Jim Perry?
Uh, I don't think so.
Okay.
Let me think. I don't believe so. No.
Because I know, Gaylord was on
Yeah.
Cleveland and Jim
Right.
was on Minnesota most, you know.
Yeah.
My other question is, a lot of the guys in here got to see the Alou brothers at their peak. When I saw the Alous, Philippe Alou was already old. He looked old even though he wasn't old. He had the glasses on. Jesus Alou was always, looked like there was a tick in his neck. Always,
Right.
Matty Alou to me was always he was a slap hitter who just he ran fast and I remember him winning the batting title or whatever he hit with the Pirates because they beat the Giants, in 71. But uh very close call between Philippe and Matty Alou. Which one do you think had the better career?
Personally, I think Philippe did because he was more consistent over his career, at least during his years that he was before he got too old. Uh,
I know Steve Rothschild's a big Philippe Alou fan. So Steve, you are up.
This you might want to add this. I'm not sure you're aware of it. When they renamed the drive, Harlem River Drive, Willie Mays Drive, which is obviously in Harlem. Harlem has changed over the years. There's a lot of uh, Hispanics living there, Dominicans.
right.
So when Mays got the honor of having that drive named after him, the Dominican population wanted something for the Dominicans related to the New York Giants. So Mars, I'm not sure you know this, but in your old neighborhood it's either Matty Alou Street or Matty Alou Road. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Yes, I know it. I know it. It's up in Inwood.
Correct. Near
Yeah.
Isham Street. That's
Yeah,
your old stomping grounds, Mars, right?
yeah, you mentioned
Where
that,
my brother lives.
Steve. I know that through you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Great presentation. Brought back a
Thank,
lot of memories.
thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Mr. Klink, Bill
Yeah,
on mute.
I'm auto. I'm back on audio. Thank you very much. Wow, some really cool information. I never realized three different ballparks they broke in. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one for the books. It's not going to happen again.
Right.
You're not going to have three guys do that. That's one for the book. You mentioned I was surprised how many times they led the league in hits, and that was, over what, 3 years, two brothers leading 3 years, all clumped together.
Right.
Have two brothers ever led the league in hits before? Are they the only two?
Maybe your audience the rest of the audience
You
may
think,
know.
Steve, you think
Yeah.
yes?
No, I think they're the only two.
They're the only
That's
two.
just a guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to show you, I don't know how close I get on these. This is These are camera day photos. That's
Oh, nice.
Jesus, that's 63. Uh, no, that's 64. That's 62, taken by one of my fraternity brothers. He didn't take as good a
Oh,
picture as my mother
oh,
did.
neat.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you would, where am I got lost here. Am I here?
Kieran,
You're still
Am
on.
I?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm off my screen. I don't know if this was heralding Matty's leading the league. His second year, he led the league at St. Cloud. I mean, he had 321. He had 144 hits in 121 games. I mean, how many sophomores do that in any league on it? Um, do you remember much or have any information about his making such a big impact there in St. Cloud? Do you have any information on that league?
No, I don't. No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I do appreciate it.
Sure.
just a wonderful one. I think I'll get my screen back. I lost it, but you didn't lose me. So thank you very much, Richard.
Okay,
Thank,
thank you.
thank you, Bill. Harvey, you're up.
Richard, that was terrific. Am I on? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Uh, Richard, I was looking at the lists of family members who play. Didn't Bruce Bochy have a son who pitched an inning or two for the Giants? I didn't know if that was on your list.
No, that was not on my list, but yeah, they did. He did pitch for the Giants when Bruce was managing there. I think he only lasted part of the season. I think he didn't last very
Yeah,
long.
Brett Bochy.
That's it.
Brett
That's right.
Bochy.
Yep.
Thanks, Gary. That was my contribution. Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Breslow.
Uh, thank you, Richard. That was interesting. Question I have, so at one time, all three Alous were starting players. How long did they last as starting players? And is another trio of the DiMaggios, I think they were all starting players. So how long did the Alous last as starting players?
Well, it would have been after Matty left it would have been after Matty left the Giants and went to the Pirates, and then I think the Braves. Felipe would have been with the Braves as a starter, and then I think Jesus would have been. I don't know if he was a full time, but he played quite a bit with his time with the Giants. So it was probably in what Matty got traded in 64. So 65, 66,
If you
67.
come back.
Like that.
65,
Yeah.
66, 67.
Of course, then
So
later,
Jesus,
I think once they moved to the American League, I think they may have been starters there again. With the Yankees and Oakland. So,
thank you, Richard.
yep.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mars. Mr. Lipman, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, I got here at 7:14, so I think I missed some of it, which is upsetting. But this may have been covered. I apologize if it has. I noticed from the statistics that the three Alous had very different batting styles, and I'm intrigued by that because I would expected that genetics, at the very least, would have made them more of similar hitters. So I'm wondering if you could comment on how they were the different styles of play, particularly with I think it was Jesus not walking much.
Well, I think Matty was the smaller of the three. I think, like I said earlier, I think he was. Philippe said he was 5'5" and 130 pounds. Of course, he grew some after. He was only 17 years old when he signed, but he, as I think Gary mentioned, he was more of a slap. He was more of a slap hitter that I recall. Where I don't know. I don't know that I could say much about Jesus's batting style. I think maybe someone else that actually probably saw them play more than I did might contribute to that. Yeah.
Like Gary said, he had the twitch. It was
Yeah, he always looked like he was in pain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave,
All right.
Dave,
Can't give you more than that. Yeah.
Dave, I asked Richard this question. Maybe you know because you're kind of familiar with the area. Well, I was a little surprised that it was named what Steve had said, Matty Alou Way or Street, that it wasn't, the Alou Brothers Street or something to honor all of them. I was a little surprised by that. Dave, do you have any knowledge of
My
why?
my first thought is that he may have lived in the street because he played for one of the New York teams. Which one did he was a Yankee, was he
Yankees.
not?
Yeah, but Philippe Alou also played for the Yankees.
Right, but he might have lived there as opposed to Philippe. So I'm looking that up right now to find out how.
All right, if you find out any information, forward it. Let us know, okay?
Oh, I'm doing it right now.
Okay. In the meantime, go ahead.
Where is the street?
It's on. Comes off of Seaman Avenue, 1 block north of 207th Street, and goes east to Broadway.
where the
I'll be
church is.
there
Where the
And I'll
church.
be there on Saturday because that's where my brother lives, and I go to see him all the time. So
How many blocks is it? Is it just one block?
2 or 3. It goes
Oh.
as far as Broadway, and I'm checking that up.
All right, get back to us. Howard, you're up.
Gary, it had something to do with the fact that he was drafted by the New York Giants. Mays, Alou, I don't know why Jesus was just he's kind of a flash in the pan. He wasn't really with them long, or wasn't a star where Matty was. A lot of it might have been political. I don't know.
Right. Thanks, Steve. Howard, you're up.
Yeah, hi, Richard. Just 2 quick questions. Maybe I missed it, but on your list of brothers, did you include Hank and Tommy Aaron? I don't remember seeing them on there.
Well, this was my list was 3 or more brothers.
Oh,
So-
okay. Okay.
So yeah,
I thought you kind of had another.
yeah.
You kind of went a little bit further than that just by talking about 2, and those are very notable, obviously,
Okay.
brothers who played, and they played on the same team. My second question has to do with the trade of Matty. Were the Giants? Were the Giants ever second guessed about that trade, particularly as the 1966 season went along and Matty was turned into a batting champ? And the Giants, who did they get? Dick Schofield? I really don't remember that much about the trade. But were they criticized at the time of the trade or second guessed later on about the trade as Matty turned into a batting champion?
I don't know. I don't have any.
I'm talking about the media, of course, the media,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the fans, whatever.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay, because I don't know
haven't
either.
read about that. So
I don't, because I would imagine a lot of the fans were, as the season progressed, 66, and Matty was tearing them up, and then he had several good years after that. That maybe the Giants gave up on him too soon, and maybe Chub Feeney was the GM then, right? He might have been the one who engineered the trade, or what did Herman Franks have anything to do with it?
I think let's see. I'm not sure.
Okay, don't strain your brain. I was just
Yeah.
wondering. Okay, thanks. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Hey, Judge, Matty Alou, when he got traded to the Pirates, reminded me of Luis Arise. I got to tell you, guy was always hitting the ball. Mr. Sexton, you're up.
I just thought I'd share with you that I have here a genuine Alou relic.
Cool.
I was at a game at the Polo Grounds in 1962. The Giants were playing the Mets. I had been an avid Giants fan in the 1950s. I was delighted to see them back. And I was seated behind third base, 10 rows back with a bunch of kids all on the line. And the Giants were taking batting practice. And Matty Alou tossed this ball to me, just intending to, throw it to the kids. And while I was distracted by the popcorn coming down the line, it hit me right in the forehead. And according to one of my buddies, Matty Alou was horrified. He came running over to make sure that I hadn't been injured.
Oh,
So
cool.
I had to wrestle this away from my 2 young sons when they were playing with it in the 1980s. And to hear them talk about it was as if I had caught them with the Holy Grail.
That's
So
right.
I still have it.
Cool.
I found the story. It's on. It was done in 2015. It's just from New York One News. A Manhattan street is renamed for a late Dominican baseball star. Family and friends came out to see the big reveal of Matty Alou Way in the corner of Isham Street and Seaman Avenue in Inwood. Alou and his 2 brothers, Felipe and Jesus, were among the first Dominicans to play in the majors. Matty was a 2-time All-Star and won a World Series with the Oakland Athletics in 1972. He also played briefly for the Yankees in 1973. His daughter says the ceremony was a proud moment for more than just her family. His name here is not only his name, it represents all the Dominicans who live in this great city, said Matty's daughter, Teresa Alou. So I'm sure they're all proud and happy for this. We are recognizing not only the Alous, Matthew, Felipe, and Jesus for their great contribution that they did in sports, but yes, also for being great role models for the youngsters. The Alous made history in 1963 with the San Francisco Giants, becoming the first 3 brothers to play in the same outfield in a major league game. He died in 2011 at age 72. There's a 1-minute, 9-second video with it. Gary, I'm going to send you the link.
Yeah, I read that, and unfortunately, Dave, thanks for reading that. It really doesn't tell me like why.
No, it doesn't. I think it's just basically because that was it's such a heavily Dominican
Right.
neighborhood now. So
Frank,
I'm
did you
sending
have,
you the link.
thank you. Frank, did you have anything else you needed to add?
Nope.
By the
No.
way, Frank is one of our newest members, and it's guys like him who find us, on the internet. That makes this so great because he's a natural right here, so it's great.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us again, Frank. Paul, you're up.
Richard, thanks. That was great. That was a great presentation. I
Thank you.
guess I probably know the answer to my question, but I'm not sure. I'm assuming that of the three of them, that Felipe had the longest career.
I think you
Is
did.
that
Yeah.
correct? In
I think so.
baseball? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay.
And so
Yep.
also the only guy with power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's
You
the
know, the
only
other,
one still alive also.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I think for when you're kids and you're rooting for your team and you see a baseball player get traded, and then later on he's having a good year with other teams, you go, why did they trade him? I thought
Mhm.
about that with Felipe Alou. I thought that with Matty Alou too as well. And so, those are the kinds of things that bring back mild nightmares.
Yes.
There's a book that Felipe Alou wrote. It's called Alou, My Baseball Journey. I think it was like 2018.
Paul
Uh,
Karasitis.
yeah, it was that was a pretty good book.
Yeah. Norm and I went to the Willie Mays Celebration of Life, and Philippe Alou came to
Okay.
speak. And Norm, I think he was one day out of knee replacement, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
He wanted to be there for to talk about Willie. So
And then he wouldn't sit down. When he went up to speak, they gave him a chair to sit down when other people were speaking. He would not sit down.
that's correct. Mr. Mully, you are up.
Thanks, Gary. Richard, I just want to look at the game when they all played together. How big a deal was that nationally when it happened? Is it something we look back on and realize how just rare it is, or is it something that captured everyone's attention when it was happening?
I mean, I think it at the time. I mean, there were found numerous newspaper articles that had reference to it as being the first time. I think probably looking back, it's probably more celebrated now than maybe probably at the time. Uh, but I did find not only in the New York and Giants newspapers, but others had reference to that occurrence. So,
And you said that Mays suggested that he put the lose all three of them out there.
Yeah.
Any backstory on that? On Willie recognizing the significance of all three playing? Is that what drove
well,
it?
I think yeah, he had been after, according to the news articles that I read, he had been after Al Dark to make it happen. Dark again was hesitant about putting him in. Apparently, he had some personal incentive or the team had some kind of incentive if they were to get into second place. Now, I think they knew they weren't gonna win the pennant, and so he was. The few articles that I read said he's like, I'm only gonna play him in blowout games, and so when they actually got in that first game, it wasn't a blowout, but they were behind, and when they batted, when he pinch hit, when Dark pinch hit to both Jesus and Matty, but then in the game when they played in the outfield, Mays got after, according to Philippe, got after Dark, said, "Look, put him out there and put those three out in the outfield. I want they should be playing together." Now they had played together in the Dominican Winter Leagues together on the same team before, so I think Mays was aware of the significance at the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Are we going to Russ or Norm or both? Norm,
Whoever you want.
is it your cousin Russ?
No, my cousin Russ.
Your nephew. I'm sorry.
Josh.
Josh, I'm sorry. Is it Josh or Norm or both of you?
Oh, Josh, you want to say something?
It's really interesting. Actually, I mean, that was a great presentation. This is a little bit, it's on topic, but off. It was something that was said like right before the presentation. We were talking about some of the best hitters. And what's really interesting being a lifelong Giants fan is, Felipe Alou was around to see Barry Bonds hit and all that. And, what's really interesting, I often thought, what do great hitters like the Alou brothers or Felipe Alou think about the hitters that came after them? So my mind was going to that actually a little bit, but as we were talking about some of the greatest hitters before the presentation started. But thanks for all that. That was a wonderful talk and a lot of information shared.
Thank you.
And I thank you also. I do have some comments. One is I heard that the fourth Alou brother was Bob.
Bob.
Bob Alou.
Babalu. Okay.
Babalu.
I get it.
Okay.
I
That was
well,
Ricky Ricardo's brother.
during the presentation, I did look up the Perry brothers. They did face each other once on July 3rd, 1973.
Oh, nice.
Gaylord Perry took the loss.
Okay.
As far as the body styles and why they hit differently, as you said, Matty was a left-handed hitter, a slap hitter, and did the drag bunt. Felipe Alou had the regular body, and he had the power, and so he had a different approach. And Jesus Alou was thin and wasn't as strong. And I remember his hits predominantly, he hit the ball to right because he didn't have the same power as his brother. As far as second guessing the trades, I mean, I was young. When they traded Felipe, I was 11 or 12. There was not second guessing on that one because we got Bob Shaw, Bob Henley, and Del Crandall in that deal. And so we needed those pitchers. And so there was not second guessing on that one. And for Matty, at the time, there was no second guessing. So we had a pretty good center fielder at the time who he was not going to replace. And we also had a system of lots of young outfielders. And so he was just an extra part that no one really second guessed. And really for us, the Giants fans, where there's some trades where we get real angry and then wish the worst for a player. For Matty, when he was doing so well, it was more of a credit to our system. If the Giants had a good farm system, we could trade somebody, he could go off and lead the National League in batting. So those are my comments. And I thank you because it's your presentation that makes me remember all of these things.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for the
Anybody
update.
else with a question? By the way, Bill, go ahead, Bill.
All right, let's see. Yes. Thank you for the presentation, Richard. I just wanted to say out of the Alou brothers, Felipe was the most athletic because back in the Dominican Republic, he was a star in track and field.
That's
and
right.
he won several awards in the Olympic Games at the Dominican Republic. So he was very athletic, the most athletic of the three.
He started out, he intended to become a doctor. He actually was enrolled in college in the Dominican when through the some of those games that you mentioned is when scouts started to talk to him about becoming a baseball player. But his original intention was to become a doctor. So
yeah, because at that time there was no money in track and field. So,
that's right.
yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Gary?
I'm sorry, Frank. You want to ask a question, Frank?
Yes. You
Go ahead.
talked about fathers and sons and brothers. I know of two father-in-law, son-in-law combinations. I wonder if you know any more. There was Lou Boudreau and Denny McLean. And there was William Judy Johnson from the Negro Leagues and Bill Bruton. And I believe Dick Schofield, his father was a player and his maternal grandfather was a player, although I can't remember who. And do you have any more information on that topic?
Well, I think the Schofields were father and son, Dick Schofield, Ducky Schofield, and then Jason Worth was in that family because he married a Schofield, a Dick Schofield Jr.'s sister. Let me see other father-in-law.
Brandon Crawford and Garrett Cole, brothers-in-law.
That's right. Yeah.
Wasn't Jose Rio and Marichal related somehow?
That was his son-in-law.
Son-in-law.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think
it was a great presentation. I thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Mr. Klink, do you want to take us home?
Yeah, I just had one memory of pinch hitting by Matty Alou. You'll remember in two of the most important games ever played by the Giants, he lead off pinch hits in Game 3 of the 62 playoffs, Game 7 in the World Series. Matty came through.
Wow.
And the other thing was, I remember reading an article. The Giants were quite concerned about their off-season activities down in the Dominican, Richard. I don't know if you know about this. And that was nothing that had to do with baseball. They like to they sport fished where they would do it underwater using, whatever they are, guns or
Beer
whatever.
guns.
Spear
Spear
fishing.
guns. Spear
Yeah.
guns. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the sharks. And,
Right.
they avoided them, but the Giants were quite concerned because they'd go down there, the three of them, they had a great time. Well, that's a terrible way, would be a terrible way to lose one of those guys.
Right. That's good info. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. All right, let's all give it up for Richard Cuicchi. Richard, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
And as Richard told you, he's from New Orleans, so he's going to come back in February to talk about Melot. So
Oh, cool.
that'll be a great thing.
Yeah,
For the rest of you, if you don't join, we're going to have another meeting on Thursday. It'll be our annual wrap-up session next Thursday after the holidays. In the meantime, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus, whatever it is you celebrate. Enjoy in good health. If anybody wants to hang around for a little bit, we'll talk some Giant baseball. But I'm going to shut off the recording. And Richard, again, thank you so much, man. Be well.
Thanks for
Great
having me.
job. And Richard,
Good night,
you
everybody.
mastered technology.
I passed the test. All right.
Be good.
Good deal. Thank you.